Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. It has everything. All the characters you could ever want, well, I mean, except for one. Multiplayer modes for days, endless records and stats, almost every stage, I mean, except for, maybe his stage. Hundreds of amazing music tracks, maybe like aside from one character's theme song. They even made Classic Mode more unique to each character. They got Spirit World, so many options and ways to customize, but the one thing this game is missing, the one thing that was left out, which makes me absolutely livid, one huge thing missing. In fact, I'm so surprised that people aren't shouting at the rooftops about it. I'm surprised that people haven't rallied at Nintendo's headquarters, burning an effigy of Reggie Fils-Aimé in protest for the egregious exclusion of, and his name is, Stadium Mode. Oh, and as for Waluigi, I mean, he's an assist trophy, alright? That's good enough. But Stadium Mode? Where the hell is Stadium Mode? It's a feature which has been a part of Smash games since the very beginning, and it has been completely excluded from Smash Bros. Ultimate. Everyone is here? More like everything except the only feature that matters is here. Okay, Stadium Mode isn't the most played mode of Smash Brothers, but it is an often overlooked yet rewarding and interesting mode that has always been there in some shape or form. Target Test and the Home Run Contest are the main features of Stadium Mode that add a lot to the single player and even multiplayer experience, providing strategic challenges that force you to think outside the box and master each character in a unique way, all with almost endless replayability. I'm going to give you a brief history of Stadium Mode and its different versions throughout the Smash games, and how exactly we got to the sad state we're in now, where it's left out entirely, and more broadly, why it's such an awesome mode that I think deserves more recognition than it gets. It started out with break the targets and board the platforms in Smash 64. Now, I've actually never played Smash 64 since we never got it when I was a kid, but a friend of mine and fellow YouTuber Slush has played it, and here's his brief rundown of it.
Of the two modes in Smash 64, Break the Targets is probably the one most people are familiar with. Each character has a unique array of targets scattered throughout a stage, built to test the player's skill and familiarity with their moveset. When compared to later entries in the series, these stages were a lot more basic. And I mean that in terms of visual design and level design. Part of the reason for that is the limited moveset that each character has in 64. There are no wall jumps or side Bs or tether recoveries, so there's a bigger limitation on how these stages could be designed. Despite this, they were still well crafted, and you would occasionally run into a target that seems to somehow always be slightly out of reach. But if you're clever, you'll figure out how to get it. The other mode that's exclusive to Smash 64 is Board the Platforms. The name is pretty self-explanatory. Each stage has a bunch of platforms and you have to land on all of them to win. It's not wildly different in concept from Break the Targets, but the challenge here is more in avoiding obstacles and hazards. For the most part, it's pretty straightforward, though some of the level design could be pretty dickish. But all in all, they make for a fun minigame, and it still feels oh so satisfying when you perfect a level and set a new record.
Now, much like every other aspect of Smash, when it comes to these stadium modes, Melee did it best. In Melee, they brought back Target Test and introduced Home Run Contest. Some stages even had themes and designs related to their respective character's universe. For example, Young Link's stage had two tall tree trunks that you had to wall jump between in order to get to the targets. These tree trunks obviously were a reference to Ocarina of Time's Kokiri Forest, in which you played as Young Link. Sometimes these target tests were actually pretty difficult, and it took a lot of creativity to try and complete them without falling to your death. When you finally did break all the targets, the challenge then was to get a better time and perfect your run. Now, Home Run Contest. Oh man, was this mode stressful, but in a good way. Okay, so you had 10 seconds to beat this sandbag up and launch it as far as you could across the field. Of course, the more you hit the sandbag, the higher the percentage it got, and the further it would fly, which was a pretty clever use of Smash Bros. Percentage-based combat, only for a much different purpose here, because it taught you finesse, patience, and strategy. If you accidentally accidentally hit the sandbag off the platform, that would count as your distance. So you gotta make sure it stays on the platform right down to the last second so that you can get the maximum percentage. But there is also a bat that you could swing to send the bag flying. But it also takes a couple seconds or less, depending on how fast you are, to grab the bat and get in the optimal position to swing. So you need to achieve the highest percentage on the sandbag while keeping it on the platform, while saving time to grab the bat. But holy shit, the timer is counting down and you have only 2 seconds to send the bag flying or else it won't leave the stage, but you don't want it to fall off. And oh my god, there's half a second left and holy shit! And just watching that sandbag fly majestically through the sky was a beautiful sight. Trying to perfect each character's high score in home run contest and figure out the techniques required was something I sunk hours and hours into. Every character swung the bat differently. Some didn't even need to use it for maximum distance, while others completely relied on it. Captain Falcon, for example, was better off with the Falcon Punch. Roy was better off with his neutral B, I think. And smaller characters like Pikachu needed the bat for any real distance. Brawl introduced Target Smash, which was no longer specific to each character, instead opting for 5 preset target challenges. I understand why they had to do this since the roster was much bigger this time around, but it still would have been nice to have a unique target test for each character. And the stages we did get were kind of bland. Brawl also introduced co-op home run contest, which added so many more possibilities and strategies to beating up the sandbag. Which makes me think that even 10 years later, people haven't even scratched the surface of what's possible. Unless, I guess, there's like some really cheesy tactic that just blows everything else out of the water. One other thing that Brawl introduced to Home Run Contest was the barrier surrounding the platform. This prevented the sandbag from flying off the platform whenever you hit it, and after the timer was over, the shield would drop. While the barrier could shatter after enough hits, it made things less challenging for the most part. But on the other hand, also less frustrating, so I guess it's kind of a matter of taste. Still, getting the optimal percentage in the quickest possible time and launching the sandbag as far as you could was still pretty challenging, and it was something you could spend dozens of hours trying to perfect. Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U and 3DS changed it up again with Target Blast. Target Blast was a linear challenge of launching a bomb at an array of targets, essentially making it home run contest combined with Angry Birds. This was the lamest and least interesting form of Target Smash. It didn't really challenge your knowledge and skills with each character, nor did it feel unique. It was just a throwaway version of Home Run Contest. Speaking of, Home Run Contest made its return as well. It brought back the invisible barrier that Brawl had, only this time the barrier was even a bit harder to break, and some of the mechanics of how characters interacted with the sandbag were made to be more consistent. Smash 4 even introduced a more competitive angle to Home Run Contest, allowing for up to 4 players to take turns playing against each other for the high score. This was a great innovation to Home Run Contest, and it seemed like Sakurai was continuing to add interesting features and improvements onto this mode. A couple downsides, however, was the fact that for one, the barrier was even harder to break this time around, making it easier, and the fact that some of the physics of the game felt a bit off. Occasionally, the sandbag wouldn't react the way I would expect it to for certain hits. No, the gameplay and the physics felt the most smooth in Melee, which makes sense given that those qualities are what make it the most competitive Smash game to this day. So that's the history of Stadium Mode in all its glory. Well, most of the time anyways. But why didn't Sakurai include Stadium Mode in Smash Ultimate? Well, probably for the same reason he excluded content like Stage Builder. I messed around a bit with Stage Builder in Brawl and Smash 4, but it was more of a gimmick than something I'd go back to or get anything useful out of. Stadium Mode felt completely different from a throwaway feature though. Quite the contrary. It had depth and challenge to it. It was a unique and interesting use of Smash Bros. Mechanics, and it was a mode you could spend a lot of time playing. I get that there are too many characters to make individual target tests for in Ultimate, but at least having a number of preset variants would have sufficed. And excluding Home Run Contest entirely makes no sense. Now, of course, it's possible that just like Smash 4, these modes can come later with DLC, and it would be a welcome addition if they did that, but still, Stadium Mode deserved to be built into the game, I think. Although it's not a huge feature, it's still a largely appreciated minigame, one that has sparked many creative strategies and records throughout the years. All in all, Stadium Mode will always hold a special place in the legacy of Smash Bros.
Speedrunners. Yeah,
it's so intense. I mean,
Oh no! Oh,
that was great.
Oh my god! I can't believe he got that! Sniper strike again! Best punish I've seen like all weekend, like all month.
That was insane.
私は死なんぞハルコアームキャプテンハルコ